Hello everyone, my name is Victor. I am the Occult Technician, and this is Mind War, Season 5, Episode 7.
Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Folks, on a recent episode of Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast, starring comedians Matt McCusker and Shane Gillis, they had a guest named Billy McCusker. Now, this was episode 526, titled Reunited, featuring Billy. Now, Billy is Matt's brother. And what Billy was saying is that he recently visited the MZOO Institute. It sounds like he was there for almost a week, and basically, I believe he signed up for the Gateway program. He actually went to the MZOO Institute itself and stayed on campus for several days going through the Gateway Experience tapes. Now, this was a very interesting conversation, okay? And he was very, very candid about his experience at the MZOO Institute. And I'm just going to be honest with you folks, it didn't sound like it went very well, okay? So starting out, basically, he said that each day they would listen to multiple tapes per day in the room that they were assigned. Now, these rooms, he said, you actually were sharing a room with another person. So right away, there's red flags, okay? If I'm going to be listening to the Gateway Experience tapes, I am not going to be doing it in another room with a stranger. That sounds very uncomfortable, and doing it in a very unfamiliar place just doesn't sound like an environment that would be very cohesive with making the tapes actually work properly, okay? He talked about how multiple times during the day, I think up to 4 times a day, they would try to listen to the tapes, and then they would meet together and have group discussions about what happens. It all, in my opinion, sounded like it would be very uncomfortable. For me, I don't think that would be something I would really be very interested in doing, right? And so Billy talked a lot about his experiences. He said basically that the food was terrible, number one. But number two is that each time he listened to the tape, he basically just fell asleep. And honestly, I don't think he got very much out of it. Now, I think that's an interesting episode to listen to. Of course, Matt and Shane are comedians, so they just kind of joked about it, because they have to make the podcast funny. So take it with a grain of salt. They are going to be making fun of the Gateway Experience tapes and the work that we do here. But we understand that the tapes are real and that they are very serious, right? And we also know that in order for these tapes to work, you really cannot just do them back to back. You can't just go through them as quick as you can thinking that you're going to get results. You have to take your time. And that's why we've broken out this series and really made it an entire year. The Gateway program should take time for you to go through, and you may have to go through it multiple times, right? I've said before in the past, Wave 1, where you're learning those basics, many of those tapes, you should be doing them over and over and over again. Understanding what Focus 10 really truly is, making sure that you really can get into that hypnotic state of your body being asleep, but your mind being wide awake. And then and only then should you move on to the more advanced levels, right? And now, of course, if you are not experiencing these tapes, right? If you're just listening to them and nothing is really happening, again, I've said it before multiple times, adding the enhancements of THC and low dose psilocybin will get these tapes to activate 10, 100, 1,000 times greater than they will if you're just sober-minded. Now, again, this is not any type of advice, right? Again, you have to be healthy enough to be able to do these things. If it's not in the cards for you, I'm sorry to hear that, but that really is a major part of making these things work, right? So, a very interesting episode. I think it would be worth listening to, trying to, hear from someone who was very recently at the MZOO Institute, from other friends that I've heard who have been in communication with the MZOO Institute. The word is that it's kind of financially having some issues right now. So my guess is things are a little wonky over there. I'm not really sure what the future of the MZOO Institute is, but with the work that we're doing here in the Mind War, we're going to continue to promote the Gateway Experience tapes themselves. I think that's the most important part, or the most important thing that came out of the MZOO Institute. And again, we are using them as part of really self-help. And then as we've gone through the self-help steps, as we've healed our mind, body, and spirit, then we move forward with those advanced tools like we're doing here today. So again, that was Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast, episode 526, titled Reunited, featuring Billy. I think that was an interesting episode, and it was worth listening. All right, folks, let's jump back into Ultimate Journey by Robert Monroe. We left off on chapter 12, Inside the Inside. Monroe says, what follows is a compendium of abstract of many sessions with the I there of me. Beginning with the second meeting, all I had to do was phase in gently, pass through the broken barrier, and I was inside in the dome of light beams, in the heart of my I there. So let's see what Monroe is talking about here. He says, the focal point, the tip of the pyramid of you, and more, including you as you are now. Monroe says, it must be rather a mess. Not at all. We are highly organized. We know the memory layer when you moved in. I do? It's neatly set up in serial form and also by category. So are all other existence patterns we've been through. You can look up what you want immediately. So Monroe is talking to what he calls the I there, and we're going to describe them in a moment here. But basically, this new group that he has found, and he says I dash there, okay? So from what I understand, they kind of describe it as this. Again, we've talked about this cloud, right? This cloud that is the spirit. People call it God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, right? And in that cloud when a drop of water comes down, when that drop of rain, when that drop of spirit comes down, it goes into the physical body, and now we become an individual person with our individual spirit, right? And then after we pass, that drop evaporates and goes back up to the cloud with all of our knowledge, and it's reunited with the cloud. It becomes one with it. So what Monroe kind of discovered here is that basically that drop, although it is an individual from that makes him who he is, or makes us who we are, it also contains a lot of the life essences of people that have come before us and evaporated back into the cloud, if that makes sense, right? And so with it comes all these other sorts of spirits, and their knowledge and what they've experienced. So it's kind of passed not only through the spirit, but they talk about it also being passed through the DNA, our lineage. So the DNA is our physical connection to those who have come before us. And then the spirit, again, that drop, that is the spirit that is connected with all of us. And they talk about how we have access to all the information. Again, we've talked about this idea that every existence, everything that has ever existed or been alive in the universe, their experiences are all in some type of technological database out there floating in the universe that we have access to. And they say here that it is set up in a serial form and also by category, and they can grab that information at any time. And so now Monroe is asking, tell me, is there some name, some identification I can use for you? I gather you have more than one. Again, this is him asking, what is the I there? Who are you people? Where did you come from? And it says, we have whatever is needed at a given point. We're the brain trust, the think tank, the older brother, whatever. Why don't you use some of your acronyms you're so fond of? How about board of advisors or executive committee? That's close to what we are. So again, he's kind of come in contact with these spirits that are really connected to him, who have guided him through life, who guide us through life. And they kind of saying, hey, we are like your board of advisors. We're like your executive committee. We're there to help you along the way. I thought that was pretty interesting. So Monroe goes on to say, let me get this straight. You've been helping me all my life. Certainly we have. Sometimes you appreciated it. Sometimes you didn't. How far back does this go? Before you were born? You had better tell me. I don't remember. You wouldn't. You didn't exist. We made the decision to become human again. We selected the time and placed and organized the DNA mixture, elements from the physical and elements from us, the spiritual. We took those parts of us that seemed most appropriate, rolled them up into one, and sent them in. There you and we were. What exactly did you send in? Personalities and memories. What else? So again, they're kind of talking about in this drop of spirit that came down, again, because it got mixed back up with the cloud, as that drop is created for a new person who's being born, it is going to have some of that essence and some of the memories and personalities of people who've already existed. So he goes on to say, do any come in and go out with just one human lifetime? He says, we have heard so, but we haven't met one, or we couldn't identify any. Why are there all these repeats and recycles, these multiple lifetimes? Up to now, human lives have been and are used in such a random way that it's not possible to get wide enough experience in any one lifetime. So we keep on returning until we have what we need. Does that make sense? And so again, they're talking about this idea of reincarnation, but this is the interesting part, because like I've said before, you're not reincarnating your exact drop of spirit or soul. Once you pass, that spirit or soul goes back up and it mixes in with that cloud. And so now when it comes down, when a new drop is created, it's going to, again, have essences of other people's lives and personalities and experiences, not only in the spirit form and those connections, but also through our physical DNA as we connect through our ancestors. Again, those are those ingrained, all the things inside of us that we kind of already know when we're born. Again, that comes through the DNA or through the spirit, right? So let's see. One thing that he did say that was interesting, they talked about, and maybe we go into this more, that there were at times people who were born and their spirit was pure, meaning that cloud, a drop was created that had no human experience in it. And every so often, we get a person on the planet today whose spirit is pure. It has no past. It has no memories. It really is experiencing life for the first time, right? So you think of it, you're pulling that pure drop of water that's had no experiences out of that cloud, out of the bucket, and putting it in. And today, we might look at those people as the Christ, the Buddha, people like that. That's very interesting, right? So let's see. It goes on here to say, I think I'm beginning to understand. You are sort of my guardian angels, or that's what some people would call you. Oh no, they said, we aren't your anything. We and you are the same. You've been helping yourself all the time. Folks, we've come back to this very simple understanding over and over again. As you send out your questions and your requests and the issues that you want to deal with and the things you want to manifest, as you send them out into the universe and you are asking spirit entities or whatever might be guiding you for answers, as above, we know that those answers come from within. That is, we are helping ourselves, no one else, right? It's coming from within. As below, that's the as above, so below here, folks. Let's see where else we go here. Monroe says, let's see, this again are these spirits talking with him. They say, we did not believe those were needed, but if you do want one of us to use your body and talk while you go somewhere else, just relax and go to sleep. Monroe says, no, I don't want to be a channel. That's not a route of freedom as I see it, but I wish I knew the answer to what I should be doing now. So what Monroe was asking them is, why am I not clairvoyant? Why don't I have ESP? Why is my only special gift having these out-of-body experiences? And the spirits are saying, we didn't think you need those other things. The out-of-body experience was the most important. Monroe is mastering it in order to teach all of us. That was his goal. That was his gift, right? But they do say, if you want to be a channel, right? So we've seen in the past through movies and literature, this idea of mediums being channeling spirits through them. And so these spirits are saying here, if you want to do that, to use your body and talk while you go somewhere else, just relax and go to sleep, and we'll do the talking through you. So folks, for those of you who want to be channels or mediums, right? There's your option. This little paragraph right here, again, a whole new branch of research can be done from that, okay? So Monroe is again he's really looking, what is my purpose? What am I doing here? And the spirits say to him, service to humankind might be classified as self-serving, but in your case, because the effect spreads so widely, this does not apply. The more we improve humankind, the more prospects improve. One major improvement is equal to 100 minor ones. So again, this idea of helping mankind, right? Of improving the human condition. That's what we're doing here. That's what we do here in the Mind War in our own little way, right? We're doing our very best to have these experiences and share them with others. If we can simply do that, we're going to have more and more people start to understand what we're doing here, healing the mind, body, and spirit. We're going to share with them the tools that we've learned, and it's going to help mankind. I know it seems like a big goal, but it just starts with a few people, right? So it's why we do the work. It's worth doing the work. Monroe, he proved it. He went through and did this work, and he spoke out about it, and it spread like wildfire. It's all over now. Again, like we said earlier in this episode, it's being talked about on major podcasts with huge, celebrities and stars are talking about the Gateway experience right now. That's amazing. That's what we need. The word is spreading, folks. We go on. Monroe says, there must be a tremendous amount of experience stored here in you, in us. How many lifetimes are there? And the spirits say, 1,000 perhaps, or more. We stopped counting long ago. Every possible situation is here, every emotion. There is nothing you can encounter in an earth life that isn't stored here in 50 different ways. So again, basically they're saying there are thousands of spirits connected to you, Monroe. And we are sharing with you all of our experiences, right? Kind of interesting. Again, he's kind of taking a whole different route here of explaining, before it was spirit guides and things like that. So that's the end of chapter 12. I thought that was interesting. Again, him talking about these spirits, the I there that he's been connected with. And that was chapter 12, Inside the Inside from Ultimate Journey. All right, folks, let's jump into chapter 13 of Ultimate Journey by Robert Monroe. This chapter is titled Fine Tuning. So let's see here. It says, the major task of my I there was to pick up previous life personalities who had been overwhelmed by Earth life system addictions or various belief systems, so that the essence of their personality was unreachable. When the individual human mind finally broke the grip of the belief or found a crack in the system, one of our I there members went on a retrieval mission. Time was not a factor in this, except that all such rescues took place in what we would label the past. So, Monroe here is talking about humans who were in their Earth life system. They were addicted to something, whether it was a physical addiction or a belief system addiction. And that basically when they passed, their spirit was unreachable. They had been so caught up in their addiction that after they passed, there was no getting back through them. They were either desperately trying to get back into the physical in order to continue their addiction, or they were blinded by the belief system that was forced upon them here on Earth while they were in their physical bodies, and they cannot let go of that, the fairy tale. They have to believe in it, and they are kind of forced into that bottleneck, into that fairy tale after they go, right? And so one of the things here they talk about this retrieval mission of going back and reaching these people and helping them move on to what comes next. Now, folks, as you know, I've talked about this before. When I joined the Marine Corps and left for California, I was gone for 20 years. And my childhood best friend, one of many, his name was Nathan. And I stayed in contact with Nate while I was in California. I did my best to call him at least once a year. And shortly before I returned home, after being gone for 20 years, I contacted Nate and said, buddy, I'm coming home. I'll be home shortly. But sadly, Nate died of a fentanyl overdose just 3 months before I returned home. And that was so heartbreaking for everyone who was already here. And it was very difficult to come home to such a sad situation. And my hope and my goal here is maybe through the remainder of the Gateway tapes that we have to go through is maybe trying to contact Nate to see if he is stuck in some type of loop where he is, imprisoned by his physical addiction still, even in the next life. And maybe I can do something to help free him. We'll see how that goes. And I will do my very best to share with you everything that occurs with that. So Monroe goes on here. He says, in waking hours, contact with my I there is immediate. I need only think of my XCOM, his team here, and indicate the performance desired. Instantly, memory echoes of similar events or situations from previous existences flash through my awareness. Some are very profound. Others are stupid enough to illustrate perfectly the infallibility of hindsight. If I need the response to a clear cut, moving slightly out of phase is all I need to do, I still wonder how many humans are hospitalized and drugged because they hear voices from their I there. So again, this idea of this kind of committee of spirits who are there to help, again, not guardian angels, but spirits and their connection to us, you can learn from them. You can learn from their experiences, right? We see that. We often do that in our life today. We see someone else who has made a mistake or they've been successful at something, and we learn from their experiences and we follow through and we work with them. The same thing, you can internally kind of contact these spirits that have connection with you in order to have them help guide you, right? So let's see where else we go here in this chapter. Okay, so here we're going to be talking about something MZOO calls the M field. Now this is basically, he explains it in chapters before. Again, all of this is very esoteric. MZOO uses pseudo-scientific terms in order to try to talk to the scientific community instead of talk to the, occult community. So it's very interesting, but he calls basically one of the most important parts of us is our emotions, our emotional spirit, right? Our emotional energy. That's one of the most valuable things in the universe is human emotional energy, and they call that M field, okay? So I'm going to call it the emotional energy. It says the influence of the emotional energy radiation induced by human minds would be overwhelming were it not for the inherent phase relationships involved. As in consciousness, phasing the entire individual system of awareness is in phase, tuned in with only parts of this radiation. If there is no alignment of a given frequency, there is no reception. Emotional energy influence continues not only in time-space, but also in the emotional energy residence, temporary or permanent. Through experience methods that prevent reception of undesirable thought, radiation may be learned, often painfully. It is a matter of phasing. Shut off the aligning receptor thought form and there is no influence. This holds true both in physical and non-physical environment. So again, a very kind of esoteric and confusing way to say that we are very influenced by the emotional energy of other people, and they are influenced by our emotional energy. And we talk about that here in a little bit. MZOO goes on to say that group thought, especially when it is primarily emotion-inducing, can be highly contagious. Oh, don't we know that? Owing to the extreme amplitude of the radiation. Conversely, the organized emotional energy radiation of a single individual can, if broad-banded enough, be many thousand times greater than that of the group. Whatever the source, reception can influence any mind and or body that contains resonant receptors. Again, a very esoteric way to say that, number one, you can get caught up in the mob, in the emotional energy that the mob is radiating. So be very careful about that, especially in the next few months. Be very careful, folks. And then also, we're talking about single individuals, these leaders, political or religious leaders, right? Business leaders, whoever it may be, they can also create that same type of emotional energy as the mob does and get a mob to form. So again, be very careful about getting emotionally charged up by a single individual, okay? They go on to say, or MZOO says here, there is an internal factor of influence to include. Emotional thoughts have the capacity to instill signals into the physical body which may be misinterpreted. This is very important, folks. These can interfere not only with the physical DNA format, but also with the I-there pattern. This interference is engendered unintentionally by the physical human mind manipulating the emotional energy field. The results may vary from strong physical health through immunity to severe illness, as well as their remission, placebos, miracle cures, all the way to physical death. What MZOO is saying here is, again, that emotional energy, whether it's from the crowd, the mob, or from an individual, some type of leader, right? It can be misinterpreted by our physical body and cause us physical pain. We understand that someone's emotional radiation, if they're constantly angry at you, if you are constantly being emotionally attacked, it breaks the body down, man. You get depressed, you start to get sick, it wears away at your immunity. But if you have the opposite, if you have loving emotional energy, where you have people around you who love you and care for you, then you are going to become stronger. Your immunity is going to get stronger. Your muscles will grow. You'll be happier and healthier. We have to be very careful about that emotional energy, the radiation that comes off of it. That's what our resonant energy balloon is for, right? When you are dealing with these people, make sure you have your resonant energy balloon in place. You can block out that negative, sad, depressed, or attacking type emotional energy that comes at you. Or you can open up your resonant energy balloon to receive in the love, the kindness, the joy, the happiness, the contentment, the calmness, the peace that some people in your life can bring. We're going to be very open to those folks and their emotional energy. Okay, so throughout human history, there have been those who have possessed degrees of control of their emotional field, thought radiation. In some cases, this was a product of synthesis by the personality cluster selected for that particular life experience. In others, the process was developed in an individual by an accumulation of residual thought radiation and translated into a working system. By control is meant the willful selection or rejection of incoming thought radiation through manipulation of receptor phasing. The quality and amplitude of the thought radiation expressed by these individuals were directed by the human mind consciousness to serve planned purposes. The most apparent of these individuals history records as politicians and religious leaders. The most successful have gone unnoticed owing to the deliberate lack of continuity in their activities. The later have the means to couple other emotional energy bands with that of thought to produce a variety of experiences within the receptor, to alter matter both in the structure and form, and to vary time-space energy fields. Again, he's basically talking about the power that individual leaders, whether he mentions here political, religious, or even corporate leaders today, that they have on us. Be very careful. Do not allow them to manipulate your emotions. Now, he also says that expressions of the minor emotional energy fields control have abounded throughout recorded human history. So there have been people who have also been able to control this emotional energy kind of on a minor level. And he says that they include medicine men, mind readers, witches, magicians, soothsayers, early kings and emperors, hypnotists, mediums, healers, psychokineticists, and mind warriors, citizen samurais, guerrilla gurus, and warrior monks. Imitators without such control have been rife in every area. So again, what he's saying there is what we're doing here in the Mind War. Right now, we may not be political or religious leaders. We're not necessarily trying to do that. Those people are often in it for themselves, right? What we're trying to do is be this other group, right? The medicine men, the mind readers, the witches, the magicians, the soothsayers, the hypnotists, the mediums, and the healers, right? That's what we're trying to do. We are controlling our emotional energy, and we're sharing the tools we've learned through the Gateway experience with others in order to help them control their emotional energy as well. Because once we do, we start to see the gifts. We start to see the tools come into play where then we can start to have a little more control over our lives, maybe even start to manifest the things in our lives that we truly desire. Now, to finish up this chapter, MZOO says, the idea that every thought I may have that is tinged with emotion radiates uncontrolled outward to others is heavy with implication. It is even more uncomfortable to be the recipient of such thoughts that others may emanate. This realization would support the effort of those who make the unrealistic attempt to spread love and light in a predator world, or those who hold that we are part of a universal one. So MZOO is talking about more in our daily life, in our real world, this idea, and he's almost embarrassed about it, that his emotional energy radiates out to other people and it affects them. So you think of all those times in your lives where you've been upset or depressed or whatever's going on, and just by living your life in that mindset, you are radiating out that emotional energy to others and you are affecting them. And that can be kind of embarrassing when you look back at those times where you wish you would have straightened up a little bit and been a better version of yourself. Instead, you allowed your emotions to overtake you and you lived through them and probably did all sorts of, sad things. You weren't acting properly. You weren't being your best self, and you kind of let yourself down, right? So this idea also that we are affected by everyone else's emotional energy. Again, that resonant energy balloon, we're going to consciously prepare ourselves before we go out into the world and interact with other people, especially if you are very sensitive to other people's emotional radiation, right? You're going to get your resonant energy balloon in place. You're going to strengthen it daily before you go out and understand that you don't have to be affected by other people's emotions, okay? So that was it for Chapter 13, Fine Tuning, from the book Ultimate Journey by Robert Monroe. When we return, we're going to go through Wave 6 Odyssey, Tape 1 Sensing, after a word from our sponsor. Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Welcome back, folks. That's right. We are starting Wave 6 Odyssey. Folks, we are moving into some very interesting territory. I listened to both of these tapes, Wave 6, Tape 1 Sensing, and Tape 2. I listened to them both last night with the enhancements of white teacher psilocybin. It was a lower dose than I normally take. It was very interesting. One of the things that I did last night is normally, I get ready, the psilocybin's kicking in. I have my headphones and my eye covers and my phone there ready to play the tape. I'll basically get everything ready. I'll hit play and then slide under the covers, right? And then I'll get right into the tape. But what I did last night is I kind of got in the covers and allowed myself to warm up quite a bit. It's colder here in the Mind War Estates. Again, we're moving towards those winter months. So I allowed myself to take about 15 minutes to really warm up, because in the past I found that those first 15 minutes I was still very anchored to the physical body because it was cold. It was going through the warm-up process. So that might be a suggestion for you too. Also take that time to kind of let everything warm up in bed, right? So let's see. Here we go into Wave 6 Odyssey, Tape 1 Sensing. The purpose of this series is to assist you in knowing that through direct experience that you truly are more than your physical body. It's through this knowledge that I hope you will live more fully and consciously during your time here in this Earth life system. The current level of maturity carries with it a responsibility to co-create a new paradigm for those who follow you in the evolution of human consciousness. Holy smokes, folks, that is big. Okay, so number one, if you have made it this far, if you have made it to Wave 6 Odyssey, number one, Monroe calls it the current level of maturity. We have matured to this level. And that maturity carries with it the responsibility. We've talked about this responsibility before. There is only one. To have your own experience and then share it with others, right? That's the most important. That's the one thing that you have to do. None of this works. You cannot be a part of the elite club of gateway explorers if you haven't had the experience yourself, okay? And then you have to share it with others. And we are going to do that in order to co-create a new paradigm. We've talked about that through the Mind War podcast, all the way from season 1, episode 1, all the way through. We are creating a new paradigm. We are removing the societal wet blankets of religion and belief systems and politics and all of those things that are forced upon us, that weigh us down. We're removing all of those things. We are healing the mind, body, and spirit. And once we do that, a new paradigm is going to emerge. But it starts with each of us individually having our own experiences and then sharing them with others. That's the responsibility. And the maturity comes with that responsibility and successfully doing it. That's what we're doing here in the Mind War podcast, and that's what you're going to do as an individual in your own way. Share your story, share your experiences however you can. Start a podcast, write a book, tell one other person. That's all it takes. That's your responsibility. This new paradigm is going to be created for those who follow us in the evolution of human consciousness. We're evolving right now through this work. You are seeing evolution of mankind happening right now. And all of you who go through this program, have these experiences, move it into the spiritual work that we're going to do in future seasons of Mind War. This is what we're talking about. Evolution. We are evolving here in front of us. In front of all of you, we are evolving together. We're moving outside of just the physical body and the requirements of physical life. We are moving past that into realms and places that we've never been before. And it's beautiful and it's amazing. And again, we're sharing it with others. Now to go on here, it says, as your body drifts into deep, deep sleep, now fully relaxed and aware, begin to notice the energy surrounding your physical body. Feel it now. Feel it surrounding your physical body. This is your second body, the body of energy. So in this state, we're just in focus 10 right now, and we're taking a moment to recognize our energy body, right? We move into focus 12, and the announcer goes on to say this. They say, in focus 12, don't move, or in focus 12, move your awareness to your right arm, your physical arm. Notice its position. Notice your fingers in the direction they are pointing. Now slowly and confidently, simply through your thoughts, stretch your non-physical arm in the direction it is pointing. Stretch it further and further. Reach for an object that is familiar to you, whatever you may perceive. Okay. So as you're laying there, you are pushing your spirit body arms. You're supposed to be, the announcer starts with your right arm, and then they do the same for your left arm. And you're supposed to stretch it as far as you can and touch something in front of you. So last night when I was laying in bed, my bedroom has all of my triangle art like you see here in front of me, all the multicolored ones. And in front of me, I had the red triangle and the orange triangle, and then the door in between. So with my right hand, I tried to reach out and grab the red triangle. With my left hand, I tried to reach out and grab the orange triangle. Now I have, as you've seen through my art on Instagram at The Occult Technician, I've used this art, these physical pieces of art in my spiritual work. So I've felt these things so many times. I know every inch of them, right? So for me, I really thought that I was going to be able to do this. And I'm going to be very honest with you. It didn't quite work last night. I was really trying to force my hands to do this. Now, it may have worked, but I think what happened last night is in the afternoon, I took a very long nap. I was an exhausted old man yesterday afternoon. I slept for a long time, and then I woke up and drank a ton of caffeine. So by the time I started listening to the tapes, I was over caffeinated. And I think that really stopped the kind of sleep chemicals from flowing properly, especially during this first tape of the night. And I had some troubles with it. And again, I really felt like I was trying to force it, right? Now, the tapes, again, in Wave 6, a lot of new sounds. We can, I believe these were created in the early 2000s. There was a lot of very interesting kind of 2000-y type sounds, right? A lot of digital kind of music was added, some interesting new sounds. Some sounds were sort of abrasive. They were almost behind you, kind of pushing you forward, right? So the tape goes on to then say, the next step is you're going to push through those objects that you've felt, and you're going to move and try to reach something that's beyond them. So beyond that wall that holds the red and orange triangle, you walk out that door and you go into my living room. Many of you have seen it in my Instagram account. That's where I do my spiritual work during the full moon, is upstairs, right? And on the wall, I have a moon shelf and a sun shelf. On each of the shelves of these pieces of art, there are all sorts of trinkets, and that's where I store my magic mushroom powder and my tarot cards, right? So I know everything that was on this shelf, and the instructor says move through the first wall and start to touch the things on the second wall. That worked a little bit better. Now, the thing that I found is it wasn't like my second body hands doing it. It was more of me just remembering. I think I was more just remembering what was on the shelves. Again, I was seeing my hands hold the things and touch them, but I've done that so much, I think it was just pulling back on memories, okay? So there was a little frustration, but here's what happened. As the tape got deeper and deeper, I found myself sort of looking downward. My physical eyes just kind of went downward. And when that happened, I think the tape really started to kick in. I think I started to get the effects that were really meant to be happening earlier, because my body, as my eyes fell downward and I got deeper into that sleep, my body just extended so quickly and so far. I felt like I was 100 feet tall, right? It was stretching my spirit body upwards and my feet were going outwards. And really what happened is, instead of just my arms moving in the direction, I felt like my entire physical body, almost like a bobsled, like I was laying there, it was kind of sliding and stretching towards these different objects, right? Not just my hands, but my whole body. Now, I don't think I completed what this tape really was trying to get us to do, which was to feel things with our spirit hands. But this stretching of the spirit body was very interesting. I think that was great. So again, Wave 6 Odyssey, Tape 1 Sensing. The goal is really to stretch your spirit arms and start to feel things. I think I'm going to need to revisit this tape at some point in the future and see if I can really get it to stick. But I thought it was an interesting tape, a lot of new sounds. Again, we're on wave 6 here, folks. We got wave 6, 7, and 8, so that's awesome. Now, to finish up with today's episode, I wanted to just mention real quick the subplot that we talked about in the last episode, where basically I have been manifesting this reuniting with a friend of mine who I spent a lot of time with in California. And so just over this last week, that reuniting occurred, and my friend came out to visit, and it was such a lovely visit. It was very calm. It was very gentle. It was only a week long, and that was difficult. I wish it would have been so much longer. But my friend, she brought with her a newly minted human, someone who in just the last few months was introduced to their physical body for the very first time. And that was so amazing to interact with this human being, right? Very special, very loving, and I really wish I could have communicated with them better and tried to understand exactly where they just came from and what they could remember. So this time, it was a wonderful week. Again, very peaceful. My hardened heart started to soften quite a bit. And this reminded me of actually a time when I was in Marine Corps boot camp. Okay, so boot camp is about 90 days for the Marines. And after about the first 2 months, the drill instructors announced something very interesting. They said, recruits, we're going to be going to watch a Major League Baseball game. So we went to the San Diego Padres stadium and watched a baseball game. And what I found was that when we were away from boot camp, when we were away from the base and we were kind of out in the real world and we were told, hey, just relax and you can have fun and enjoy yourself a little bit, I felt very uncomfortable. I really wanted to get back to boot camp, this place where you're constantly on edge and you can't let down your guard and you're just constantly, fighting and looking behind your back and just waiting to see what the next, attack is coming. You really are on high alert. So this idea of going and allowing that alert level to drop a little bit, very uncomfortable. I was so glad when the day was over. I just wanted to get back into the heat of boot camp battle, right? And really this last week, in some ways, reminded me of that because the last few years I've spent a lot of time alone. I've worked very hard at understanding what it means to be alone, to dealing with that. And so spending time with other people, especially a long week like this, it was in some ways difficult because, again, I had to soften up that alertness, soften up that hardened heart, and now I look in front of me and I see a long, dark winter, right? We have several months coming up through the winter as we continue through the Gateway program. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be difficult, but, that's what we have to do. That's what we signed up. That's what we volunteered for. And so we put behind us that loving week. We appreciate it for what it was, but most importantly, we move forward. And as always, remember, folks, harden your hearts and open your minds because this is Mind War.